What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. You're listening to episode 289. I am your host, Greg. I am here tonight with Ryan, but I am also here tonight with Brandon and Nick from the Hockeytown West Podcast. How are you guys doing tonight? Thanks for joining us.
Greg, we're doing great. Thank you for having us. It's so exciting to get on here again. It's been a little while. We are excited to talk all things Griffins, though, and give you guys some updates from our end and then play a fun game with you guys here. So this will be fun.
I'm good. I'm super excited.
Good. I'm glad you're excited. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm about to talk shit to Tyler on Twitter for not being on here, so I'm going to be great in about 30 seconds.
Tyler's doing me a service because it's easier to fit 4 people into a frame on a video than it is to fit 5 people. So we don't lose anything in conversation, and it's easier for me to edit. So it's a win-win situation. But we have a bit of a show tonight. We're going to play a fun game of Griffin or Red Wing. We're going to go through a few players and say whether they're going to make the Griffins team, whether they're going to make the Red Wings. Maybe there's a wild card thrown in there. But off the top, we want to talk a little bit about some news or rumblings or just BS that Dave Pagnotta throws online. First, we're going to go off the top. We're going to make Ryan mad immediately.
Nope.
Saying,
I'm not. Don't give a shit.
Dave Pagnotta tweeted, he had a list of stuff. Bruins and Swayman seem confident a deal will be there before camp. Heard earlier that Swayman wanted around $10 million a season, which is, I guess, good for what Swayman does, right? $9.5, $10 million. I think Bucci said 9.5. Great. Jarvis and the Canes sound close on a long-term deal, maybe 7 to 8 years, around $7.5 million. That's kind of what Lucas Raymond should get, right? Like, that's the Lucas Raymond, like, sweet spot. But then he follows it up with Raymond and the Wings not close. Berggren deal likely by camp. He gets to Detroit this weekend. So I know you guys are excited about the Berggren to camp stuff. He's showing up in America. It looks like he's getting a contract soon. He kind of talked about it on an interview last week. But the Raymond not close line is going to irk a bunch of people. And what it could be is either Dave Pagnotta making stuff up for clicks, or it's Lucas Raymond's agent coming out and basically Pagnotta calls the agent says, we're not close, and he immediately tweets it. So do we have any snap overreactions to Lucas Raymond not being close?
You know, when I saw the tweet at first, I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked at who it was from and said, oh, I don't care anymore. Like, it is what it is.
Par for the course.
I mean, exactly. I hope it is close. I hope that's not the case. I mean, he's my favorite Red Wing by far right now, and I really want that deal to get done. So, but I am excited about the Berggren deal. That does make me happy. I'll be curious to see what it looks like and what the waiver exemptions are and all that fun stuff to see if he's in Grand Rapids or not. Who knows? But I am excited for that.
I mean, I've been on. I keep tweeting out that we're gonna see those contracts signed once we get to Traverse City. Like the boys are out, they're enjoying their summer, have them rest. Once they're in Traverse City, they'll sign that new contract, and that way they can do the photo op, they can get everything done. But I think this is like a little bit of smoke to the fire that was posted like a couple of weeks ago when they were saying like Buffalo was going to offer sheet him. So maybe this is just like a run on that. But I'm not concerned yet.
Ryan, that was kind of like what someone on YouTube brought up, right? He's in Sweden, right? And he's not home for that photo op and the social media glory of signing a huge contract. And you think it goes all the way until he comes back for camp?
Totally. Because I wish I had the time to actually go back and look at the deals that Yzerman has made, especially the high profile ones, to see when it's announced and what corresponds with it, meaning a picture. Because you think back to the Larkin extension, where was Steve Yzerman? In his kitchen.
With Larkin's amazing grill.
Yeah, that was a beaut. But as a whole, though, you want your guys there signing on that dotted line to show that, hey, this is a big thing going on for us. And the names that he has constantly mentioned since day one have been Larkin, Seider, Raymond.
That's the core,
it's
man.
It's going to happen. We have still within a month. Said this last week. I mean, it's if they get to Traverse City and within the first couple of days nothing has happened, then I would give permission to worry. Until that point, we really, and actually, I'll go one further. Thanks to Mario, he's like October 7th, the day to watch. Which, of course, he knows he's paying attention to these things better than I am because that's when the roster deadlines hit for the NHL. So if that's where you're getting to the point and you don't have a contract in place with one of those guys, I'm getting upset because we talked about December. Yes, that's the RFA deadline for playing in the season. I got it. But you can't go into this season without those two guys on the ice, plain and simple. So,
Yeah. So you guys heard it here. Ryan does not give you permission to panic until we get a couple days into training
yeah,
camp
I'm
and
sure
there's
that'll
no
go
contract.
really well with people.
No permission. Second part of a little bit of Red Wings stuff in Detroit is that the 97 won the ticket apparently let Derek Lalonde on the radio to talk about hockey, which like never happens in Detroit sports radio. And there was a quote that I picked
Don't let
out.
Ken Cal, first of all, hear you say that
Well,
because you probably will get yelled at because him and Pat Caputo have a show that they are typically on together.
sure,
Just
that is
throwing that out
only
there.
around games. And
Well-
Ken Cal is the 197 won the ticket. Now, if he was if he was a talk host on 97 won the ticket, it'd be a different story. But the big shows do not talk Red Wings whatsoever. But Jansen had Stonian Jansen, is that who it is now? Had Derek Lalonde on this morning. And the quote that I picked out that I really liked, and it also has to do with you guys, is he says, I got to be careful because I got to let this play out, but I'm a very huge fan of those three players knocking on the door. Three guys that knocking on the door are Nate Danielson, Carter Mazur, and Marco Casper. And I just love a lot of the two-way game they have. I know as a coach, it was a great team, a fun team to coach last year, but we outscored a lot of our defensive deficiencies. And he goes on to talk about how those three guys not only have offense, but are also two-way players that are very defensively responsible. So what kind of, I know you guys only saw Nate Danielson in a couple games in the playoffs at the end of the season, but what really kind of like makes you super excited to see guys like that push for Detroit? Like, what are some things that you guys might be seeing on a nightly basis that just the casual Grand Rapids fan are not seeing in Nate Danielson, Carter Mazur, and Marco Casper?
I mean, for me, it's just the fine details in their game. There's no better time to be a Griffins fan than right now in a long time. Like the guys that we're watching here, the most exciting players we've seen probably since 2017. So watching these guys develop every night and looking for those fine details, especially in the defensive game, because that was a big call out for Berggren when he was getting, thrown back and forth, was his defensive play. So you start watching the other prospects and go, all right, how's Casper doing? How's Mazur doing with this? And their defensive play has just grown so much this year, especially Marco Casper. I'm a big guy in saying that Marco Casper will probably be a Red Wing before Carter Mazur. That's my hot take, I guess, out of those three guys. But I'm excited to see what Nate will bring to the table. We don't know where he'll end up, but I'm excited to see. In those couple of playoff games, it was hard to really see what he was gonna bring to the table. He didn't really get the opportunity to show us what he's got yet.
Yeah, it was tough for us to be able to watch Nate because he only played, I think, 2, maybe 3 games, and he got kind of inserted right into the thick of the playoffs against Rockford. So it was like he's coming off that travel. We didn't really get to see much from him. I thought it was a bad idea to play him, to be honest, just because it messed with the team chemistry. But Marco, like you watched him the first half of the season defensively, he was so sound and he was doing all the small things, the board work. He was getting dirty in the corners and up front in the net. And then the second half of the season, he just exploded for offense. So like I honestly I want to see him here again for one more year just to see him grow that game. And there's just no rush right now to be able to bring him up. And then Mazur, I mean, he was the MVP of the playoffs for us. I mean, he a couple multi-goal games, game-winning goals. Like he's there, and he just I think this year he's going in with a little bit more of a chip on the shoulder, kind of like Berggren did last year. So if he doesn't make the team, he's gonna have like a big I don't know how appropriate to say it, but he's gonna have a big year this year to get on the team next year if he doesn't make it this year.
Marco Casper, I think since Nate Danielson came in, I think a lot of people have kind of pushed Marco Casper aside, and I don't think that's super fair. Simply because Marco Casper, even if he comes in and he's your third line center, he's going to beat the hell out of people. I think that's the one thing that people are missing is just like, yeah, he's a two-way player, but he's also super physical and he's not going to take anything from anyone. And if you're whining currently about the Red Wings not being tough enough and not having a guy on the team that's going to stick up for people or get in fights or go in there and mess things up and they're taking liberties at our young guys, Marco Casper is going to be one of the guys that's going to come in and that's going to be one of his main jobs. And not that he's like a power forward, but he's almost your 20. I feel like he could become your 2024 style enforcer almost. Like I'm thinking maybe a Tom Wilson style player where he comes in and he has some offense to him, but he's also going to not let your players take shit from anyone.
The nice thing too is that you mentioned, and this might even upset people, that he comes in on the third line. But just go back to the glory days, if you will. And I'm dating us by going back. Christ, it's been 22 years. But Datsuk, when he came in, he was on a line with Brett Hull and Boyd Devereaux. That was your third line, sometimes fourth line, depending. I mean, they still had a grind line, so that was obviously what you relied upon. But you let a young, raw talent in Datsuk thrive, and you heard the accolades that Brett Hull gave him and what he could produce in those moments because he was able to just go out there and be free and do it. You do that with any of the guys we just mentioned all day. The opportunity's there it's right for the taking. And I honestly could care less which one it is. Danielson, I think, is the shiny new toy that we all got to see a little bit last year in camp. And then we all got really excited when he made it to Grand Rapids for the playoffs. And depending on who you talk to, they were pretty disappointed in how he looked. But I really don't care. I mean, when we talked to the coach a couple months or a couple weeks back, actually, it's been almost 2 months now, probably. He intentionally did these things to get him that taste. Now, Nick, to your point, I mean, it might have hurt the chemistry a little bit, and that's disappointing. But at the same time, that's also the reps we want to see with these guys, and that's the type of situations we want them in as fans, because that hopefully is something that's going to translate very quickly to Detroit. And if it does, that means we're doing things right in terms of the organization, because now they're pushing for and making the playoffs rather than making it to game 82 and finding out in a 30-second span that you're no longer in it.
And there were a bunch of people that went in and they're like, oh, the 2 games that Nate played, he didn't look very good and he looked kind of lost on the ice. But it was almost the opposite when we talked to Dan Watson. He's like, no, Nate came in after coming out of an extremely long run and going deep into the playoffs in the WHL directly to a team playing. It was either that day or the next day without knowing any of the people, without knowing the system. And he came in and he performed, I guess, above what Dan Watson expected him to do. And it's simply because Nate's the kind of guy, like, I think Nate is, and we've said it before, he seems almost like a mini Dylan Larkin, where he comes in and he tries to pick up as much as he can, as quickly as he can. And he lives and breathes hockey, and he's always trying to push himself to be better. And it was the same kind of thing when we talked to Amadeus Lombardi, it seems like a reoccurring theme where the guys that Yzerman drafts are those kind of guys, the guys that are consistently pushing themselves, consistently trying to find ways to improve their game or get better. And Ammo even said it himself that it takes him a season to come in and to start to figure out the game and figure out the league and the pace and figure out what he needs to do to improve, work on it that offseason, and then come in and just blow it up. So I want to know what you guys expect of Amadeus Lombardi going into next season, because we know he expects a lot from himself. And it looks like he has the will and the talent to do it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the year he breaks out in the AHL. You saw him come in, and he didn't, he's not going to go and put up 100+ points like he did in Flint his last year in junior. But he came in and he was figuring it out, and he's figuring out with limited minutes, different line mates every single night, and trying to find the way to play his game. And he started to find the way to use his speed and skill, and he'd get knocked down a few times. Then he all of a sudden learned how to protect the puck a little better. Then he's taking away the puck and stealing the puck in our zone and going back the other way with it and setting up great plays. And like watching him play with Elmer Soderblom this season was probably the highlight of the season for those lower 2 lines there, because those 2 together, the chemistry was off the charts. So if he can continue to build off of what he ended out last year, he's going to have a big, big year.
I mean, I think he's a lot like Marco Casper in the fact that like Marco took that first half of the season to like do the small things, do the details, get dirty. And like you saw that with Ammo last year, he's taking pucks away. He's speeding past people. I mean, I could see him this year doing, as long as he gets the opportunities and he gets the ice time. Like Brandon said, like he had to adjust. He was on the 4th line. In Flint, he was in the 1st line. So it's different style of hockey. And he's going up against these bigger guys. Like he said this year, he's trying to go on the Carter Mazur diet, right? Food and workout and hockey. Like that's it. So I expect maybe 100 points from him this season. I'm just kidding. Let's wait for you guys. So I think he's gonna have a breakout season. Honestly, like if he can step up, it's gonna be nuts.
Is that tallest player and shortest player on a line together on the team?
Think so. Yeah. It worked really well.
It's great. They're like playing peekaboo with each other across the ice right there. You just Lombardi's just going around. It's like watching a kid running through grass as the pair.
Oh
just
yeah,
cuts through.
you see Elmer coming, and then just like Lombardi splits off from behind him. You're like, I thought that was one guy.
the improv of the flying V. But it's Nick. Your point about ammo and the food aspect in particular. You went into pretty good detail about how he loves to cook and going on that meat diet and just truly knowing for one what he's putting in his body, but also trying to make that so it makes him a better, healthier player. And I'm excited to see what he can actually do this season from across the state. But Detroit needs that too. But if he can grow the way that he believes in himself to do so, and we've seen, and the stats back it up to what he even talked about, where Greg, you mentioned it, that first year is kind of that figuring it out. And the second year is where things start to try and finally click for him. If that's the case, Grand Rapids is not going to be any hurt in any which way hurt for goal scoring and playmaking at that level, and especially if he's putting that weight on. And we know he's getting stronger. I know one of the things he mentioned, and I kind of asked him about too, is he highlighted how growing up he watched a guy like Patrick Kane. He's an undersized player, and that was a guy that he's really idled in the way he can make playmaking happen, being smaller. And one of the things he kind of hinted at is that when he's at camp this year, will he be around Kane a lot? Probably not. But when he is, he hopefully can take that and be a sponge of the way that he is going about his practice, get warm ups, and so on and so forth, to try to translate that into his own game and trying to just see how those pros act on the day to day. And I think that's really what we need to see from all of these Grand Rapids guys that are on the cusp of really setting things off.
He's got the benefit too of, a lot of athletes, they get professional chefs at, the high level when they're making a lot of money. He's basically doing it himself and fitting that diet. So he's doing it the right way. I like his approach to everything.
Now you mentioned Elmer Soderblom. We know he got injured last year and he missed quite a bit of time. That kind of screwed him up a little bit developmental wise. Is there anything you've seen that maybe he has done or he's worked on or gotten a lot better at from his time on the Red Wings till now? And do you see him in the NHL in the future? Like, do you see him maybe in some games next season and eventually a regular? Or do you think he'll be kind of a tweener like Berggren's been?
Yeah, so with Elmer, it was strange. He got hurt and then he got sick and he could not kick this flu bug. We were talking to Dog Thompson, the equipment manager, and it was a bug he couldn't kick and it knocked a lot out of him. But what we saw from him last season was he figured out how to use his body and still skate around with the skill and the silky mitts he had. He was throwing hits, getting aggressive. There was one shift in the playoffs. He went out and wrecked 3 guys in a row, took the puck away and set up a scoring chance. Like, it was a whole new Elmer we hadn't seen yet. So there's still a lot of potential there. I don't think that prospect's lost. And I do think if he's able to carry on with what he ended the season last year, he's gonna have a big year. He could have, I don't want to say a breakout year, but a comeback year. And I think Red Wings fans will be really excited to see him do that as well.
Does it remind you, watching it on the Grand Rapids side of things, as someone like a Rasmussen in Detroit, where it took him a while to finally understand that I'm a big ass dude. I should probably use that to my advantage.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was seeing. And he was doing it with a big old smile on his face too. So you can tell he was having fun out there.
When we watched him come back from the Red Wings, like, it was kind of weird because felt like he was pretty confident on what he could do. He was trying to do these like crazy trick shots and trying to do this like back to back to back. And I think about halfway through, like after he got sick, he really just focused on skating. Like, his skating was so bad in the beginning of the season. So his skating got better. He got more physical, and then he started putting it together at the end. I think if you still sync him up with ammo, like, it could be a really good productive line this year because they both have a lot to prove to themselves and to the organization. So I think he's, yeah, like you said, Greg, like right. I think he's going to be a lot like Michael Rasmussen, of like that physical. And then when you saw that with him in those playoff series, like, the team was doing better. Like, they're turning pucks over, they're getting chances, they're keeping people in their own end. Like, it was a huge night and day difference when he started doing that. And we told him too, we're like, we want to see more of this from you. And he's just smiled like, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things we said when the Red Wings season was over that he played in, was if he could just become like Elmer the Destroyer, where he realizes how big, because for how big he is, he has crazy good hands, like silky hands, great in front of the net, can dangle between guys for a guy his size, which is really impressive. But when we say when you're that big, if you can also run people over, that's only going to work to your advantage. And as long as you're not that big and then like a baby moose on skates and you're clumsy and you're falling all over the place, if you can keep your balance and like to your credit, you say a better skater, if you can become a better skater and use your size to your advantage like that, that opens up a whole bunch of avenues for you to not only break out offensively, like you can because you can get through players, but also break the puck out to others and act as kind of a deterrent, like Michael Rasmussen learned how to do, and why everyone wants to be on Michael Rasmussen's line, because not only is he like a really solid player, but he's learning how to use his size and he's learning how to win puck battles and get the puck out. And I think if Elmer can do the same thing, you have probably a very offensively effective bottom six guy who also is going to be able to go out and run guys over. And that's kind of what you need.
I think the big thing too is that we've talked about the way Yzerman kind of started structuring Tampa, and that size, especially in your depth lines, speaks to that. But the caveat and the important factor, kind of like what you guys just mentioned, is that there's skill behind it. And that's what I think speaks to Moose. Like, we watched him coming in originally to Detroit, and his net front presence was off the charts. I mean, we're dubbing him a little bit of a Thomas Holmstrom light, if you will, because of the way that he can handle the puck and also wreak havoc out front of the net. And we've seen some of that skill. I think you could argue a better puck handling skill come from Soderblom, and he's even bigger. Now, if that can all just come together, that speaks to the maturity factor that's finally starting to set home. And like, hey, you want to make this NHL roster, there's certain things you've got to figure out. And one of them is going to be that skating aspect. The other two is being able to play and work that body and use it to your advantage. And if those are things that can happen, if he's going to end up in your bottom six, I'll take that all day. But he's also a guy that you can play anywhere, play on the special teams, and you're not going to lose much.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting to watch him this year. It's one of the guys that I think we are most excited to see take the ice again and hopefully be able to play the full season. That's what we want to see. Because I think if he wouldn't have had that stint where he got sick, we would be talking, is he going to make the Red Wings next year? But we obviously have to see him come out and make a big splash this year.
I think the other thing too is, like, for prospects on the wing, we don't have many down here. It's Carter, Cross Hannes, and that's about it. Like, everybody else is a college signing. So it's going to give him the opportunity to come out and take over. You know, he's the only other draft pick on there besides those other two.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good segue. We're going to take a quick break, word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about who could be a Grand Rapids Griffin and who could be a Detroit Red Wing going into next season. So we'll be right back after a word from DraftKings and BetterHelp. Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's never too early to get in your Stanley Cup predictions for the 24-25 season. Maybe not the Detroit Red Wings, but hey, maybe you think Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers might actually pull it off this time. So download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. This episode of the Grindline Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Is there a skill you've been meaning to learn? Something you see someone else doing, you're saying, man, I think I'd be really good at that, or that would be a ton of fun. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. Therapy has a stigma of just being for people that are experiencing trauma in their lives, but it can be for anyone and can help with things like coping skills and setting healthy boundaries to make you a better person. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You don't like the one you're matched with? You can switch at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. And we're back. And for the second half of the show, we're going to play a little game called Red Wing or Griffin or Red Wing, however you want to go about it. I have 6 players on my list right now. You guys can feel free to bring other players to the table. We're going to talk a little bit about each one and whether they are going to be a Detroit Red Wing or a Grand Rapids Griffin at the beginning of the season. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to play games in the other organization during the season, but where do we think they start? And I think the one that's going to be at the top of everyone's mind right now is Jonathan Berggren. We mentioned in the first half that a contract is close. He had mentioned in his interview that he did in Sweden that he's talking to coaching staff all the time. They're checking in on him. They're seeing how his offseason's going. He feels really good about it. I think this one for me is almost a lock as Red Wing because he kind of has to be. He's not waiver exempt. He'd never pass through waivers. The only tricky part, I think, right now is because Raymond and Seider are not signed. You really don't know how much money to give to him. But last season in Detroit, he played 12 games, had 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. In Grand Rapids, he played 53 games, 24 goals, 32 assists for 56 points, 10 points in 9 playoff games. Does not belong in the AHL. I mean, it's very clear that he doesn't. But I mean, let's let you guys can, I guess, gush about Jonathan Berggren for a little bit.
Oh, where do we start with Bergie? Oh my gosh. It was such a fun year for him last year because it was just that year of where's he going to go? Where's he going to end up? And of course, all the background noise of he has a bad attitude about being in Grand Rapids and everything. And then you started seeing the team release more videos and behind the scenes, and you just see him having fun. You start hearing stories. He's having a ton of fun down there. And God, his on ice performance, especially in the playoffs, was just clutch. Like he was everything you wanted him to be out there, especially on the defensive end of the puck, too. But you're right. He's a Red Wing at the beginning of the season. He has to be. And I hope he gets the fair shake to go out there and show what he can actually do.
This was my favorite player last year. I really grew to love Bergie. I mean, it was just fantastic. What he did in the playoffs was just amazing. He scored 3 straight to get us the lead and for us to close it out. Like that game will just go down in my history for greatest Griffins game I've ever attended. He's got to make the team. I mean, he's either on the team or he's traded. That's kind of where we're at with it.
That is the day I was in Grand Rapids, was when I looked at I was going to buy tickets that night to go to the game, like during the game. And I looked at the score and it was like 4-1. And I'm like, man, they're getting blown out. And then I wake up in the morning and it's like, nope, Berggren came back, scored 3 straight to like take it to overtime and they won. I'm like, I should have bought tickets to that game.
You should have went. Like the crowd was crazy. Like it was crazy. Like the whole game was crazy. But I think if Bergie, like we've talked about it off air, if he could just go in and replace Daniel Sprague, put up a little bit more numbers, like that's his go-to. Like that's what we can expect out of him up in Detroit.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that was your comparison.
And not even so much on the goal scoring, just on the point factor, because you know that more than likely it'd be an inverse and where you're probably seeing more assists from Berggren at that point. But that's not for a lack of his goal scoring ability, because as you just mentioned, it's there and we've seen flashes of it. Now, if that can just officially click and translate for him, he makes your middle 6, bottom 6 that much better. And he also, to me, should be 100% on your second power play unit, because you know that offensively, and I've said this for a very long time, probably since before he came over from Sweden, that he is like a Henrik Zetterberg type player where he will make the guys around him better. He just needs the opportunity. And I know a lot of folks probably have pulled the leash off him and are just like, just run free, Fido. But I really think that he can be an impactful player. And to answer the question, I think he'll be in Detroit. But I like, Brandon, your point about the way that he was shown behind the scenes. And I think Greg, going back to right when we finally found out that he was coming over, there was an awesome clip and video going around of him taking the media team for, oh my God, who did he play with?
Yeah, he played with Skellefteå over in Sweden.
So I remember we talked about and watched a video from when he was still over there, and they did like a follow Bergie or a day in the life type scenario where he walked them through and we talked about it. The dude's got a great personality, and it's always and as if Wings fans haven't seen that, I wish Greg, if you can find that link, which I think you did, you need to post it because it's actually hilarious to watch in the way he talks about living on his own and where he's at and so on and so forth. But that just speaks to the type of person that he is in general. But now we're seeing things click, hopefully, hockey wise. And I'm not even saying that it just happened where he is a good hockey player. That's been known. So I've been waiting maybe over patiently for him to finally be in Detroit. And now that they almost he has to force the hand because if he goes to waivers, he's gone. There's no doubt in my mind. If he's not, I'll be freaking amazed. But I want him in Detroit.
Yeah, all you have to do is go back to that interview where he came over to Detroit and he had like a great game, and him and Dylan Larkin were in the post game presser, and like he come up with a nickname and he looks at Larkin and goes, "Yeah, it's Johnny Burgers." That's what he said in the press conference, and he seems like just a goofy kid that he's just out there having fun, doing what he loves doing, and as long as his defense is up a little bit and he's not a huge defensive liability, I think he could pay dividends for the team in that Daniel Sprong kind of role, as long as that defense is better than Daniel Sprong's was, because Daniel Sprong was abysmal defensively as the season went on. So the next player we're going to go to, another one that I think is almost a lock for Detroit. Now, whether he's the 7th defenseman or he's actually in the lineup is yet to be seen, but that is Albert Johansson. Albert Johansson is currently 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. He's 23 years old. And last season with the Grand Rapids Griffins in 66 games, had 6 goals, 15 assists for 21 points, had 3 points in 9 playoff games. Johansson, and I've said this forever now, seems like the kind of defenseman the Red Wings need. He's going to go in there. He's not going to provide really any offense, but he's going to shut it down. And he's going to, you can play him with an offensively minded partner, and he's going to be able to make up for that defense that partner might not have. He, again, I've seen him. He's not afraid to throw the body either. He's not afraid to lay a hit. He's just your super solid shutdown defenseman. And that is something that the Red Wings have lost over the last few years and have yet to get back. And if you're looking for a solid third pairing, I'd play Johansson. I mean, Johansson and Oli Mata, Johansson and Eric Gustafsson. I mean, I would be making Petrie my 7th defenseman and getting Johansson in the lineup. That's what I'm doing at this point, because I feel like it's his defensive attitude that the team is really lacking. And Newsy even said that they were outscoring their defensive deficiencies. You can have less defensive deficiencies when you bring in a defensive defenseman.
Yeah, Albert Johansson, especially last season, you finally got to see what he could bring to the table. His first season in Grand Rapids, he was sheltered, third pairing. Ben Simon didn't really give him the opportunity to shine. And then he comes out this season and wowed us all, especially in the absence of Simon Edmondson at any point, taking over the defense and running it all. He was perfect. His attitude is fantastic. He does have an offensive upside occasionally if he gets activated. When he gets up close to the net, he can rip it. God, the Flying Toasters game, he had a beautiful backhand goal that I still remember to this day because I was so impressed and didn't know he had that in him. But like you said, he can throw the body. He does have the grit. His personality on ice reminds me of Mo Sider when he was in Grand Rapids, honestly. He's not going to fight you, but he'll hit you, he'll grab you, he'll push you around. He's just going to smile and laugh at you when you're talking crap to him. So I'm excited to see him get his shot. I've been begging for him to get those shots. I thought he should have gotten 9 games last year, at least just to see what we had there. But I think you're right. That third pairing, he's going to go back there and he's going to shut it down. That's exactly what we expect him to do.
Mr. Albert Johansson, one of my favorite defensemen while he was here. I mean, he's just sound defensively. He's on the penalty kill. He's able to stop pucks. Like he's going to Detroit. And I hope for whatever reason, like they're able to find room for him somewhere besides the press box, because he truly does deserve to play in the games. I mean, like he should have at least half the games played for this year.
I think you make a good point there. I think PK2, there's a hole on PK2 that someone like Albert Johansson could absolutely fill, and that should get him playing time.
Yeah, I mean, his competition at this point is Petrie and Hall. So make yourself better than one of those guys, but I really don't see a world, unfortunately, where Jeff Petrie isn't in your top 6.
Yeah, and you guys might get Justin Holl this season, so we'll see.
I mean, it's tough because you look at Puckpedia, and right now they actually have Johansson on the non-roster Grand Rapids side of things, and William Legason up in Detroit, and you also don't have a Mo Sider. But I really still think Petrie is going to fall into your middle pair, if not your third pair, which you shouldn't really touch. If he's third pair, I can actually, with Edvinsson, I can be okay with it. As long as because it's going to be more sheltered matchups. And I think that plays a bit into Petrie's wheelhouse, as well as being just an extra year, because we all hated Sherratt after year 1. And I'm trying to go into this with rosy colored glasses, is that Jeff Petrie, a year in the system, coming into year 2, we're going to see a Sherratt more controlled type of player with an understanding of what it is that he has to do. But he's also going to have a guy like probably Edvinsson, or even Amata for that matter, on his opposite pairing, who's going to play a bit more of a controlled game, where Petrie's not going to be relied upon to go jump in, and those other guys can do it for him. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But Johansson, your bar is Justin Holl. If you can't get past that, we're in trouble, or even Jeff Petrie for that matter, because I struggle with a world where Olli Maatta is your odd man out. I don't like it, because I like what he does defensively better than the other two. And I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision, because I look at the contract situation. Maatta, $3 million. Petrie, 2.34. Technically over 6 if you want to get into the true technicalities of his deal. Justin Holl, 3.4. Do they have to worry about those things? No. And maybe, who knows, this could even play into the contracts, because, there's the 10% buffer on what they can do for salary cap. But that deadline in October hits, you've got to be cap compliant. Does one of those guys fall victim to that, because you've got 2 RFAs signed in Seider and Raymond, as well as Burgers?
I just thought the easiest way to make room right now is if you waive Justin Holl and he goes to Grand Rapids, you recoup around 1.5 million in cap space. And that is enough money to sign Berggren and Raymond and Seider right now. So just do it. I mean, that's just your choice right now. Just go do that. Waive Justin Holl, get him to Grand Rapids. Sorry, guys, your defense is going to be much worse this season. But we get to have Albert Johansson in the lineup, and we save money. So it's a good situation to have.
See, I see that, and I'm actually kind of flipping, where Hull will do fantastic in Grand Rapids, which he probably will. There's no reason he won't.
Oh, yeah. He could play 80 games in top pair minutes.
I'm still mad that he wasn't given more opportunity last season in Detroit as it is, because I think defensively he was sound. But we're the guys that just sit here and complain about hockey for fun. So
constantly. Yeah. The next guy is Carter Mazur. Carter Mazur last season in 60 games played had 17 goals and 20 assists for 37 points. He had 8 points in 9 playoff games. Carter Mazur really seemed to explode after December. We got this kind of reoccurring theme where we asked Dan Watson, we're like, what happened? And he's like, in December, it seemed like the guys really, stuff started to click with them, and they started to work more as a team and figure each other out and really gel. And that seemed to be the case for Carter Mazur. I am a firm believer that Carter Mazur, if not for that injury in development camp, could have started last season on the Red Wings. I think he's a guy that we have said historically does not need, though he may have second line talent and his ceiling might be second line, he doesn't need to come into the NHL and immediately play second line minutes. He can develop on the third line. He can develop on the fourth line, because that's the kind of game he plays. Though I think he might have the offensive talent to eventually be a second line player. It's just where you need to start him. Like Nate Danielson, if he's coming in and you're like, well, we might have room on the third or fourth line for him, don't do it. But Carter Mazur, if you have room on that third or fourth line, he will absolutely thrive in a role like that, with his ceiling being higher than that. I love that he loves to get under people's skin, piss people off, play that rough style game. We forever compared him to like what we wanted out of Tyler Bertuzzi. Just a gritty guy who's going to go to the net and get pucks, going to tip pucks in, but also going to piss people off, go win board battles and get the puck. If I had, and right now, so the Mazur thing for me is it comes down to roster space. And because of that, I think that Carter Mazur starts in Grand Rapids, but I think he absolutely sees games in Detroit this season.
I'm right there with you. Starts in Grand Rapids and sees games in Detroit. I love everything I saw from Carter Mazur last year. And, everyone does talk about that gritty game he has. And, everyone compared him to Tyler Bertuzzi. And he, of course, has said, I don't want to be Tyler Bertuzzi. I don't want to be this guy. I want to be Carter Mazur. But the offensive upside that this kid has is so incredible. And I saw him kind of step away from the grittiness last year and kind of let Marco Casper take that over and be that guy. He really just started showing his offensive skills more and using that ability and again being sound defensively. So yeah, he's in Grand Rapids to start the season for sure, just because the way the roster is constructed right now. And us as Griffin's fans and Griffin's podcasters, we couldn't be more happy about that because our Twitter page will be filled with highlights of Carter Mazur for at least the first half of the season. But he is in the top of the list of call-ups to Detroit this season, 100%.
I have to agree with Brandon there. I think he's back here just based off the fact that there's just no room for him up in Detroit. Like if we're trying to figure out where Bergie's going, like that it's going to be between him or Mazur. So I think the biggest thing that Mazur needs to do this season is just stay healthy, put on the weight like he's been trying to do, keep it on, and stay healthy throughout the year. But I do think like if there are injuries, he's probably one of the first wingers to come up. But hopefully there's no injuries to our team, to the Red Wings.
Yeah, I'm on the to Grand Rapids you go train. It's not saying for a lack of trying because the talent's there, but much like some of the guys we're probably about to touch on, it's crowded, and unless they're pulling off a Lucas Raymond and or Dylan Larkin preseason for that matter, it's going to be tough. And would they make the bottom six better if that's where if they made the roster? Yes. But can that be maintained for going into the season and throughout the season?
Now, for a guy that you speak of Dylan Larkin, training camp or development camp or preseason, Nate Danielson. Nate Danielson last season with the Brandon Wheat Kings in 26 games had 12 goals and 14 assists for 26 points. With the Portland Winterhawks, he had 28 games played, 12 goals, 29 assists for 41 points. Killed it with 24 points in 18 playoff games. Played 2 games in Grand Rapids at the end of the season. Nate is a guy that he's all motor, he's all skill. He quickly after we drafted him and we're like, who's Nate Danielson? And then you come in and you're like, oh, that's just like a recurring theme with Steve Yzerman. He drafts a guy and he goes, who the hell is that? And then 2 weeks later, you're like, I understand what you did there. Like, I get it. It makes sense. I feel like if Nate can come in and Nate can have a Dylan Larkin style preseason, or Nate can have a Lucas Raymond style preseason, you find room on the wing for him somewhere. You do something. You carry him as an extra. You sit a player and you play Nate, because I feel like the talent is there for him to get maybe you start him on the third line as a winger and get those minutes there, or he's the absolute first call up as soon as a center goes down. I just think that he has the best Dylan Larkin path to the NHL, where they bring him in as a wing, move him over to center, because historically last season was one of the best preseason faceoff guys. Like, it didn't look like he lost a faceoff at all. It's again, the hype for Danielson is there and it is continued, which is good. It hasn't cooled off. And I think that Danielson, if anyone has the surprise chance to make it out of camp, it's Danielson. Is he going to do it? Probably not, but I think he has the best surprise chance to do it.
I'd agree with that. I think he does have the best surprise chance to do it. It'll be interesting to see how this one shakes out. Like we said, we saw him for a brief stint here in Grand Rapids, and you can't really judge him too much off of that stint. He just came off a long playoff series with Portland, comes to the team, practices once, boom, you're in a playoff game against one of our toughest opponents. Have fun. And it sucks that that's going to be the way that a lot of us judge him. I mean, we have an episode coming up of too early to predict roster lineup predictions, and I was the one that may have put him a little lower on the roster than most fans would like. But at the same time, he could surprise us all. I just hope that it's not a situation where the Red Wings go, yeah, he surprised us. Cool, he's playing fourth line center. He needs to be in Grand Rapids if that's the situation. He needs to be playing top line minutes, or he needs to come here and earn the top line minute spots and figure that out. But I don't know. It's just exciting for us to potentially have a guy like him here. Will he be in Grand Rapids for a whole season if he starts here? No, God, no. He'll be gone pretty quick, I think.
This is where me and Brandon are gonna fight. So I think he's in Grand Rapids. I think he's here for the full season. There's no reason to rush him up to Detroit. We have enough centers up there. We have enough people that can play left wing or right wing and play center as well. I think with Nate, it's just like getting into the more aggressive, like the taller, the stronger people. I mean, he's about 20 pounds lighter than Larkin is. So if he can come here, do well in the second C spot, is I think that's where I put him on our too early episode, and really flourish and get moved up to that first spot. I think would like to see that as his kind of development path, just so he could get used to the speed, he could get used to the guys, the strength of the guys, and get used to the system.
Guys, that was the lamest fight I've ever heard.
I tend to agree. I want ultimate chaos.
Well, you have to tune into ours.
I mean, I could spoil part of ours here and say he's a third line center on that early to predict roster.
That sucks.
So to break that down, I don't want to skip ahead here, but Marco Casper's a center in Grand Rapids to start the season as well, and he's near the top there. And you do have guys that were brought in that can play center and play it very well, and Sheldon Dries and Joe Snively and other guys like that. So when you look at that and look at how Dan Watson's coached this team in the past, it's very prove it to me is how he approaches it. Will he be the third center for very long? No, probably a couple weeks, but Dan's going to make him come in here and work for it and prove it. Now, again, he can come into training camp preseason, blow the doors down and make me eat my words, which I hope he does. But just basing it off of those facts, that's where we threw him in there.
I mean, you saw with Elmer Soderblom, he got 9 games in Detroit that first season. Like, he got those preseason games, and then where did you see him last year? 4th line in GR. Like, I like the buzz. I like the sizzle for Nate Danielson, but I think we just need to be patient with him. Like, there's going to be room for him at some point, and especially with contracts, things like that for later on.
And that's the best part about Dan Watson coaching this team too, because it's not like Ben Simon in the past where he's like, oh, top draft pick, he's going first line. Dan's going to make him work, and I love that.
Yeah, I think you hit a big one right there, and that don't rush it. You don't need to. The way that they filled out the bottom 6 in particular, you have time to bring him to Detroit. Let your other contracts play out, get them to where they need to be. And the other big part of that is, where's the salary cap going? Because we also can't lose sight of the fact that there could be potential free agents out there that Detroit pursues that are top tier talent. I'm not saying that they will, but that also shouldn't turn us off to the fact that, yeah, these guys are up the middle, that's where they come into. Because look at some of the top players in the league right now. I'll call it a Tim Stutzla, for example. People try to claim him as a center, NHL, but he thrives on the wing. We could see that with one of these guys that we're talking about. Now, is Danielson or Casper going to probably be on the wing? I struggle with that, especially Danielson. I think there's no way that you're putting him anywhere other than center at this point with the way things are projecting for him. And he also just seems to thrive in that role as it is. But you could bump Casper out to the side, and you're not going to be hurting over there. So there's a lot of ways it could play out, but the way things are for now, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. It very well could. But I'd have to agree that those guys are going to be Grand Rapids bound.
The other thing you want to take account too is Dan Watson goes 11-7 quite a bit throughout the season. So you could see him possibly get that right, that winger side or a center throughout the season, just here.
So let's talk a little bit about Marco Casper, though. Marco Casper in 71 games with Grand Rapids Griffins last season had 14 goals and 21 points, 21 assists for 35 points, had 7 points in 9 playoff games. And like you guys said, he kind of took off too after December. It seems like that's when the team finally are like, hey, look, we're a team now. And they all just started playing well. Marco Casper was one of those guys. And we talked about how he can be like defensively sound and kind of a shutdown kind of guy and can grind it out. And I think if you're looking for a eventual Andrew Kopp third line center position, where if you want to be like, oh man, Andrew Kopp, you suck as a center, let's move you to the wing, bring in Marco Casper. He's another guy that I don't think his development would hurt with third line minutes. And that's where you come down to a Do you play Marco Casper? Do you play Carter Mazur in the NHL initially? If you could play both of them as a winger, Marco's the only one that has the advantage of being a center. And I think you could have brought Marco up at some point last season too, because I think he's more than capable of playing an NHL style game. He's played with men in the SHL before. And, but again, because of roster issues, I think that Casper starts in Grand Rapids. But again, he's one of the first call ups because it's his turn. He's been in the system. He's developed. He learned last year kind of how to strengthen his game and be more consistent at the AHL level. Now, did he do it all season that way? No. But it was a lot like Simon Edvinsson, where could you have brought Simon Edvinsson up at the beginning of last season? Yes. He really wasn't ready until around January, which was when Simon Edvinsson was like, yeah, let's do it right now. And they should have, but they waited. I think it's the same thing with Casper. Could you have brought him up at the beginning of last season? Yes. But he wasn't really ready until that December, January time period. And I think he sees NHL games, but because of the current roster construction and how weird it is, he'll start in Grand Rapids, but be one of the first call-ups.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's going to start here. He'll be one of the first call-ups. He'll, at some point in the season, be fighting Nate for the top line center, I'm sure at some point in Grand Rapids here. And it's going to be a fun battle to watch. But Marco Casper has easily been one of my favorite players to play for this Griffins team on the offensive side of the puck. He's a blast to watch out in the ice. His offensive upside's huge, and he doesn't take crap from anybody. And he's the first guy to go in there and stir it up too when he wants to. And he does it so efficiently to where he never takes a penalty for it, but the other guys always seem to do it. I don't know how he does it, but it's very impressive. But he's gonna be a really good player for this Detroit Red Wings organization in the future. And like you said, third line minutes would be great for him in the NHL. And I think that's probably where he ends up being that star third line center that can be bumped up to second line center with the Red Wings if needed for injury or whatever case, but primarily third line grinder out there just getting it done. So I'm excited to see what he does this season, but he'll start here in Grand Rapids for sure.
Oh, Brandon, can you leave anything for me here?
Oh, man.
I think the point is the third line center. That's probably where he's going to be. You're going to see Dylan first. You're going to see Nate second, and then Marco third on that grind line, kind of with Rasmussen or Mazur would probably be a good spot. I still think that he starts here in Grand Rapids. I could see him getting some games later on, moving up, kind of like Simon did this year. But I think he starts here, which I'm excited about because I like him.
Yeah, I already tipped my cards before we start talking. So
we know what Ryan's going to say anyways. Now, there's one surprise guy, though, that I want to bring up. And because there's been a little chatter about back and forth about Michael Brandsegg-Nygård and where he could possibly play. And initially he had said, yeah, I'm confident in going back to the SHL, but it was kind of left open a little bit on could he play in Grand Rapids? He's not going to play in Detroit. I don't think there's any way he makes the Detroit roster, but with the departure of some guys out of Grand Rapids, there's going to be a need eventually this season for a guy like Michael Brandsegg-Nygård. Do you think that he could play in Grand Rapids, or is there at least a decent chance that maybe he doesn't play in the SHL and does play in Grand Rapids, even though we've seen like all the articles come out of the SHL, like he's there for practice, he's going to be there for preseason. If he shows enough in camp, do you think that they flip that switch and they say you're going to Grand Rapids?
For an organization that likes to have fun, he's in Grand Rapids. But I think he'll end up back in the SHL. But God, I would love to see him here in Grand Rapids for the season. I think he's ready for it. I know it's really early to say that, but what we're seeing in this preseason games that he's playing, this shot's unreal. The two-way game is unreal. I think he's ready for that opportunity, and it's going to be a battle for him. It would be a tough go, but I think that's what I want to see for him in his development path. Now, it all depends on camp, right? But at the same time, I think you're right. He doesn't have a shot at Detroit unless something absolutely insane happens. But Grand Rapids would be so much fun, and for Nick and myself, it would be a lot of fun to get to cover him for a full season. But we'll probably get to see him after the SHL season, near the end of the Griffin season or in the playoffs, that type of situation, which getting a guy like him to boost the team heading into the playoffs, I'm also happy about that.
Yeah, I think Brandon hit it right on point there. I don't think he comes to Traverse City, he does camp, but if he doesn't make it out of camp, I think he's right back in the SHL. And I think next year, if he doesn't I think next year he ends up going right to Detroit. I think he skips Grand Rapids, but I could see the situation where like William Vollinder did, where you got 9 games after the SHL season. You got a few games in, some other guys as well. So I could see him near the end, and then just elevating our team even. Hopefully, we get a Calder here at that point. Then
Ooh, it's tricky because maybe if ASP was going to be confirmed staying in Detroit when it was rumored and we thought that he was going to be over here for training camp, maybe I get it. Different types of players, positions, whatever you want to look at it. But maybe if there was both of them over here for camp, I could see maybe one or both staying. Being as young as he is, wanting to get that pro experience and really the precedent that's already there. Again, if he doesn't have a Lucas Raymond style training camp in preseason, there's no way. And it's the fact that he's crushing it in preseason with the SHL right now. So they're going to want that back. You would think that Detroit will respect that for them. But at the same time, he is signed to that ELC. So they have that flexibility to try to do what they want with him. I'm not saying that they're going to be dicks about it, but we'll see what happens. So, but again, it goes to the Nate Danielson thing of why rush it? Because there will be people that are going to clamor, and I'll probably be part of that if he has a good preseason, that he should be like, oh, he needs to frickin' be here. But at what cost? I'm not saying it'll be a detriment. At the same time, playing the long game, and we know that's what Yzerman's been trying to do here. Next year, I like that thought process more based on the contracts in place for him to come in and make some noise. And I think that's when you could really make it happen. And it also potentially opens up a guy like Andrew Kopp to either be shipped out with less contract remaining, or you never know. So we'll see. I don't think that he would get shipped out. I think that he'd be too valuable still at the end of this contract coming to the final 2 seasons. And he would be a good guy for MBN or really any of these centers that we've been talking about to try to play off of and see how they do things. So it's possible, but I like Nick's thought of next year him making the splash and breaking that roster.
do you think if Raymond doesn't sign,
Oh, you stop it. Jesus. We're not doing that. We're going to
Brian
end
has
the
not been
episode
upset
tonight with
tonight.
some listener questions and not doom over the Raymond thing.
I apologize for them.
No. Yeah, he's the next Lucas Raymond. If Raymond's going to get traded away, he's going to get offer sheeted by the Montreal Canadiens.
Shut your whore mouth. They can't do it. They can't do it. Shut up.
Patreon question from Burner, and this is actually for you guys. Any big player guests that you are targeting for this season?
Tell us your secrets. Tell us your secrets.
Man.
Tip the hand.
like
So we
Toledo
do-
or Griffins?
We have a ton of stuff coming up. We do have a few Griffins lined up already, ready to go. We have a few more Walleye lined up, ready to go as well. Some classic Toledo Storm players for the fans that followed the ECHL back in the day. We've done a couple of those this season already. We have, I think, 3 more. The final one's a huge one. That'll be a lot of fun. But to tip the hand of a player one, you're going to have to tune in and find out. But I can tell you for sure, one of the next Griffins ones will be the current captain of the Grand Rapids Griffins, Josiah Didier.
Sweet. Lucas Mountain at
yes.
Lucas Mo asks, with Ed moving up, who will take over his top pair spot in Grand Rapids? And could we see Ammo become a mainstay in the top 6 this year?
Nick, I'll let you take the lead on that one.
So we're going to see William Vollander step up into that top role, and then you're going to see Antti Tuomisto as well. When we talked to Waddy maybe about a month and a half ago, he said you should be on the lookout for these 2 defensive players to really make that step. And they kind of followed the same path as Albert Johansson, and like just being sheltered. They were sheltered on the third line, and now this is their chance to really like come up and show what they got. So you're going to see those 2 right away. What was the other question?
Will Ammo be a mainstay in the top 6 this season?
Depends on his camp, I would say. That's so tough because you've got Marco Casper and you've got Nate Danielson possibly being here in the center role. So that's a tough one for me to say. I think he's still maybe 3rd or 4th line.
I mean, my take is I think you might see some time with Ammo on the wing this year. I think he might get shifted over for a little bit to see what he can do over there. And with his speed and his abilities, I think that could be dangerous. I don't think he needs to be a center in this organization. I think we need to look at those opportunities as well for him.
Awesome. Steve at Steve Paz asks, can you speak to the recent article that insinuated that Wallman was traded because he hit the gritty one too many times? So what he is referring to is actually Detroit Hockey Now. I think it was Bob Duff put out an article basically saying that if you're a showboater in Detroit, you're going to be basically kicked off the team, and they don't like people that celebrate or do anything. It was, to me, the entire article could be summed up in the old man yelling at clouds meme from The Simpsons. That seems like exactly what it was. No, you don't trade a player for celebrating, or else Patrick Kane would not have been re-signed in Detroit this season. You don't sign a guy called
nickname is Showtime.
You don't sign a guy nicknamed Showtime and then kick off a defenseman for hitting the gritty too much. No. He was traded because he was a piece that someone would take back, who had some value to that team, who way underperformed last season, who did not perform last season to the level that he did the season before. And you needed to make room to bring other guys in, and you needed to make salary room to pay other players like Vladimir Tarasenko. There's a bunch of other reasons around it, none of which are he danced too much. None of it that is not. It's not even an entertained thought. Should never be an entertained thought by anyone. He wasted hours of his life writing that article and hitting post. Like, the best time to delete that article was before he hit post.
I hate it because I love most of Duff's stuff, and that one just made me, that was a true face palm moment.
It was awful.
You think it just came from Askarov to celebrate too much and they didn't like it? Maybe that's where he was kind of
he bench pressed the net, right?
He made the same point in the article.
He did. He said it in the article. He's like, that's why they got rid of Askarov, because he bench pressed the net and was celebrating. No, he requested a trade because they extended Saros for 8 years and signed another backup. Like, that's why. Like, there was no future for Askarov there. It's like, you could point to the obvious, or you could make up a bunch of stuff to get around the obvious point, and that's what Bob Duff chose to do there. The last question of the night is from Randy Zyke. First, he says, "We rock." Thank you, both of us. He said these podcasts rock. So,
can you re-say that last name real quick for me?
Is it Zyke? Zyke?
You threw an E in there. There's no E.
Randy Zyke at Fleb1213 on Twitter. But he says we rock. So thank you, Randy. Now, he asks about possible lines for Detroit and Grand Rapids, and I know you guys are doing that in the next episode. I think if we go through the top 6, that's sufficient. So in Detroit, I think we're on lockstep, Ryan, that the top line is probably going to be Cat, Larkin, Raymond, and the second line is going to be Tarasenko, JT Compher, and Patrick Kane. In that kind, and then you can maybe switch a couple players. So you might drop down to Brinkett, put Kane up, or drop down, or put Tarasenko up and drop down to Brinkett. But those are going to be your top 6 players.
I'll give a little preview here. So top 6 wise, Joe Snively is in the mix there. Marco Casper, Carter Mazur, obviously, Sheldon Dries, Joel Riklowski. I'm going to butcher that name every time all season long. And
Richlovsky?
Yeah. Yep. The guy from Finland we just got there.
The Finn.
The Finn. All right. And I even said his first name wrong. It's Jakob, not Joe. I don't know where that came from.
Whatever.
Elmer Soderblom making into the top 6 opening night. I think that's an opportunity there. And Nick might have something different than me, though.
I just had Nate in the top 6. That's where I think he belongs.
Do you have Nate starting on the wing or starting at center?
Center.
Nice. Second line center. This is the follow-up to his question, though. It's a 2-parter. Favorite ice cream and why? Ryan, you're going to start favorite ice cream because I have to think about it a little bit.
Ooh. Depends on what we're looking at. I mean, I would say Rocky Road.
Traditional. Nice.
Yeah. It's got a good mix. You
like some texture in your ice cream.
I do, but I'm also a big fan of peanut butter cup.
Oh, see, me too. So like a Moose Tracks.
Moose Tracks, that's what I was looking for. Not
there
Rocky Road. Moose
You're
Tracks.
welcome.
That's the one. See, I knew if we talked this out, we'd get to that conclusion.
Brandon.
Man. I'm a big cookie dough ice cream guy, but if I'm picking a very specific one, for ice creams, it's the Americone Dream from Ben & Jerry's. That's like
beautiful.
That's my elite one.
It's a great ice cream. Nick.
Go with Ben and Jerry's half baked peanut butter cup.
Oh, see, that's a good one too. I like Ben and Jerry's. The one that I just had recently that was really good is like it's like a cinnamon ice cream with oatmeal cookies mixed in and chocolate chunks. It's like called Oat of This Swirled or something. They have like the goofiest fucking names ever, but it was really good. So that one, but I am also a big like cookie dough or brownie bits kind of guy. So Ben and Jerry's has one that is both chocolate chip cookie dough and fudge brownies at the same time, and that's going to be my top ice cream.
A non-honorable mention that I just had last night because we were for some reason craving Dairy Queen. Ha- They have a Royal Reese's Fluffer Nutter Blizzard.
Ooh,
Reese's
that's
peanut
got the
butter cups
marshmallow in it.
and peanut butter topping blended with the world famous soft serve. No, just delicious peanut butter and goodness.
I
So
had
good.
Dairy Queen has an ultimate peanut butter cookie blizzard right now, just peanut butter ice cream with Nutter Butters and peanut butter cookie dough in it, which was also really good. But I guess we'll end the episode on ice cream talk. Brandon and Nick, shout out your socials, what you got coming up, where people can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you guys again for the opportunity to come on the show. You can find us at all the social pages at Hockeytown W Pod. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere to listen to it or watch it. And stuff coming up. Like we said, we have a bunch of interviews. We're back to 2 episodes a week already. We're ready to rock and roll for the season to get started here, and we will both see everyone up in Traverse City for the red and white game as well. We're excited to get up there and do that. So thank you guys again.
Where can they find you, Brandon?
At Brandon GR Hockey is where you can find me on Twitter. That's about the only social media page I use the most. And I barely use it.
You can find me at GR Hockey Guy. But yeah, we'll be up at Travers. We're excited to see everybody, and stop by, say hi if you see us up there.
Ryan.
Already Ryan 33.
Yeah, again, thank you guys for coming on. It's awesome to talk to you guys. We'll be doing it again during the season. We are going to be switching to 2 episodes a week during the season, going to 1 episode during the off season, which seems to be the popular thing, but it lets us get more timely topics in a little bit quicker. And maybe the more we post, the more news will come out, because news always comes out the second I hit the post button. So maybe it'll make things a little bit more exciting. But you can
failed
find
the last 3 weeks.
I
on
know,
that, on
and
that
I'm going to
quote,
keep
so.
doing it, Ryan, because eventually it'll happen.
Yeah, sure. Gambling's. You might as well just throw the gambling hotline out there.
Go to
while you're at it.
DraftKings. Use promo code THPN when you go to DraftKings. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We like to shout out the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get Detroit jerseys from and worked on. We have an exclusive t-shirt deal with Vintage Detroit. So if you go there, you click on the Keep It Local tab, you will find the Grindline Podcast and our shirts. Go check us out on YouTube, sub to us, turn on the notifications. You'll be notified every time an episode goes live. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Again, thank you guys for coming on. We will catch up more during the season. But for Ryan, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockeytown.